Want to develop your emotional intelligence but just don't know how? Well, sit back, relax, and grab a drink. I've got just the thing. Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel, your go-to place for building your dream career and achieving your highest potential. I'm Allie, and today we have another segment of Triple T where I reveal my top tips on anything related to career, work, or leadership. And for today, we're going to be discussing emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence refers to our ability to understand ours as well as others' emotions. It's important to have emotional intelligence in the workplace because people who are high in emotional intelligence are not only easier to approach, but they're better able to handle their emotions in conflict, they're more empathetic, and they're active listeners. And so it really raises the question of how do we develop our emotional intelligence? Where do we start? And so to help you reach your maximum potential, I am going to reveal my top tips on how you can develop your emotional intelligence. And as I'm revealing these tips, make sure you let me know in the comments below what you think about emotional intelligence and where do you think you're at? Do you think you're low in emotional intelligence or high in emotional intelligence? I'm curious to know what you think. Otherwise, let's get started. As for my first tip, you want to evaluate your emotions. People who are high in emotional intelligence understand that the key to understanding emotions is by first just being aware of your own emotions and the resulting actions from feeling those emotions. So get into the habit of asking yourself, what are you feeling at that moment? How do you feel in certain situations, and how do those feelings result in you behaving a certain way? By simply being aware of your emotions and the resulting actions from those emotions, you're going to be better able to not only handle yourself and be aware when you're feeling certain emotions, but you might even be able to use those emotions to your advantage in particular situations. As for my next tip, you need to listen and ask questions. In order to develop your emotional intelligence, you need to not only be aware of your emotions, but you need to develop your empathy and social skills. And easily, hands down, the best way that you can do that is just by listening and asking great questions. And so the next time you get into a conversation, don't think about what you're going to say or dominate the conversation. Just sit there and listen. Observe both the verbal and nonverbal cues they give you and how that indicates a certain emotion of theirs. And then when it's your time to speak, simply ask a question. Questions are a great way for not only showing that you're listening to them, but to show that you understand what they're going through. So when we're talking about developing emotional intelligence, you need to listen and get into the habit of asking great questions. As for my next tip, you need to visualize. After a conversation you have with someone, sit down and just try to visualize yourself in their situation. How do they feel? Do you understand why they would feel a certain way? Now, don't get me wrong, you do not have to agree with why they feel a certain way in a situation, but you at least need to understand why that particular person would feel that way. Now, something I want to make clear, and a lot of people make this mistake, it is not about if you can visualize yourself in that situation. It is all about whether or not you can visualize yourself as another person in that situation. So if you're talking about developing high emotional intelligence, you need to make sure you're visualizing yourself as another person. Putting yourself into the situation is not enough and defeats the whole purpose of trying to understand how to manage both yourself and other people's emotions. As for my next tip, you want to take a step back and pause. Just because you're high in emotional intelligence does not mean that you don't experience negative and strong emotions. It just means you're good at regulating them. And so when it comes to developing yourself in emotional intelligence, you need to get in the habit of regulating your emotions. Whenever you feel your emotions getting a little riled up over a situation, rather than responding to the situation, get into the habit of taking a step back and just pausing. Breathe and recuperate. This is one of the best ways to develop yourself and get in the habit of regulating your emotions. Now, if you're finding that you're struggling with this, then I also highly suggest that you pick up some stress management techniques. Now, this can be just getting a stress ball that you can hold on to, or this could be doing yoga and meditation. But if you're finding that you're struggling with it, then this might be a good time to pick up an additional technique or two that you can use to help you relax in these situations. As for my next tip, you need to meet other people's emotional needs. In order to be high in emotional intelligence, it's not just about being aware of yours or other people's emotions, it's also being able to interact with other people's emotions by using your own emotions. So when you start reading a situation and seeing that a person is feeling a certain way, you need to be able to respond accordingly. And so you need to be cautious of not only your actions, but the words that you use to make sure that you're meeting their emotional needs. Take a death, for example. You are not going to act happy and positive when somebody just experienced a loved one dying. Instead, you're going to be using very timid words. You're going to be sympathetic. You're going to be empathetic to the situation. But you're not going to be using strong language. You're not going to say things like, oh, I'm sorry your dad died. Okay, you're going to say things like, I'm sorry to hear about this passing. Using those words and watching your actions is a great way to develop your emotional intelligence. As for my last tip, and this one's a fun one, just play the guessing game. If you're going to have to develop your emotional intelligence anyways, why not have a little bit of fun? When you have a second, just sit down and just observe the people around you. Observe their nonverbal cues and guess what their emotions are. Nonverbal cues are just as important for understanding emotions as verbal cues, and so just take a look and see what people do and see if you can just guess what they're feeling. If you know them, even better, ask them afterwards what they're actually thinking and what's going on in their head. That way you can at least confirm whether or not you're right. Just by doing this, just by taking a couple additional moments to observe people, you're going to be better able to guess people's emotions and understand what behaviors indicate those emotions. So have some fun, play a guessing game. And there you have it, my top tips for developing emotional intelligence. Although it's going to take some time and patience, do these tips consistently and you'll see noticeable changes in how you manage your emotions and interact with others. And now, I'm going to hand the mic over to you all. What did you think about today's video? Where do you think you are in emotional intelligence? Do you think you're low or high emotional intelligence? Let me know in the comments below. I'm curious about what you think. And if you loved today's video, then make sure you stay tuned because I'm going to be revealing my top signs that you are high in emotional intelligence. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you're notified of my latest videos. And make sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter if you like these videos. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure meeting you all today. Until we drink again. Take it easy, everyone. Bye. Okay, I'm going to be honest. I actually had this as leftovers and had no other purpose for eating it, so I was just like, okay. I guess we're just going to throw it in here, so. Now I'm eating leftovers. Probably would have helped if I toasted it first.